Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me Guion Hughes
Yeah.
and Gazelam Ali.
Woohoo!
So the three of us are here, and the topic is going to be religion and the occult. But first of all, how are you guys doing?
Great. Doing
Oh,
great.
I'm doing really good.
Good. Everything's
Yeah.
great over here in the West Coast.
Yes, staying busy. And so concerning religion and the occult, it's an interesting comparison because I do believe that a lot of these religions that we have, they all have their roots in the occult. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I agree. I think that there's definitely when we discovered the Gnostic Gospels in the Nag Hammadi library, you know, a lot of this stuff you can see where there were a lot of different ways of looking at Christianity before Catholicism and more Orthodox Christianity, Puritanism, Protestantism. They all kind of like made it different, So the ideas that I had is I really like the Secret Book of John. I don't know if either one of you read that.
I haven't. No, that's part of the Apocrypha.
Yeah, well, that's part of the one that they found in the it's a Gnostic gospel that they found in the Nag Hammadi library, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of these things were just kind of tossed away because they didn't like what they were saying. But in the Secret Book of John, it goes all into Sophia and Sophia giving birth to they call him Yao Baal, the Lord of Chaos, which later is referred to.
Yeah, Yaldabaoth.
So the demiurge was the god that created our planet. He's our creator god. This is according to this Gnostic gospel, of course, right? And he created it, but he wasn't a good god. Sophia had him. They have all these archons. Basically, it's a polytheistic thing. This is like kind of the root of Christianity. It's almost like occultic Judaism, I guess. Jewish occultism. It's really, really old. So these archons, all these different gods. Sophia was one. She gave birth to a being that she didn't get permission from the other gods, is what it says in there, or the other archons they call them, right? And so this god, was deformed. That was the whole demiurge. He had a lion's head with a snake body, and he was all messed up. So they kicked him out, and he tried to form the world. The Paloma is where he came from. That's where all the archons are. The Paloma, the big spirit world, which I guess we would loosely recall as heaven. He actually, didn't know that much about where he came from because they kicked him out right away. But he tried to create our world in that image. So that's why our world's all messed up. That's I don't know if you've ever heard that story. So they don't deny that God is the actual creator God.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. He created the world messed up compared to where it was from. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, what's that you're showing us, Gazelam?
Yeah.
So this is Aberaxis.
Who was
But
telling
that's the
fruit, not to eat
that's
the
the
fruit. And the good God was our helper God, was the serpent who was talking to Eve and said, no, you won't die if you eat that fruit. You'll become more like him, more like the God, right? That's telling you not to eat it. He doesn't want you to become like him. He wants you to be a pet. He wants you to be like an animal. And that's why, that's where we get the whole flip. It flips around where there's two gods. And that's, you see, like the Old Testament God is a lot different than the New Testament God. Because the Old Testament God is like really like, he's very jealous. He's like, no gods before me.
It's
worship other gods, I'm going to kill you. And the new God
it's
is
a
like
complete 180 from the Old Testament to the New Testament.
Yeah, and that's where I see the occult.
That's what's curious about Gnosticism is it turns everything up on its head. And so exactly what you're saying, Guion, is that it's like, to blame it on this creator God that has created this deranged world that we inhabit. It's a lot better way of explaining why everything's fucked up than trying to blame it on Satan or something.
Yeah, blame it on Satan, or like for example, a big thing when I was into Christianity, because I think we all had some more Orthodox Christian backgrounds. A big thing for me was, people could justify things for everybody does some bad things or maybe bad thoughts, and maybe they deserve bad things to happen to them. But what about babies being born dead? Why does that happen?
Like, weird parasites that will just like you know, a fish that has its tongue replaced by a parasite, did that fish do something wrong in its past life? It was a shitty fish at one time or some shit.
I think I've
It's
also
just a theory.
well no and I've heard,
Who knows? You know, who's to say?
yeah. I mean, one of the things that I was told is that those are angels. So if God wants an angel, he has a perfect being, like a baby, like a newborn, born and then dies and then becomes an automatic angel because they didn't do anything bad here, really, So but I mean that's kind of like I mean I think it's a lot better of a fit to the philosophy of this is just a messed up world and messed up things happen because we have a messed up God, and it's not
And
God that wants
I
everybody.
guess where I got triggered on that too is that I grew up Mormon, and so Mormons have this concept that we lived in a pre-existence as spirits of light or intelligences, and so the cosmology and all the stuff in the pre-existence before we came here, that we had these pure spirit bodies, and there was a whole war in heaven between Lucifer and Jehovah. And Jehovah, according to Mormons, is this Yaldabaoth that you're talking about.
Yeah.
His Quetzalcoatl in the Book of Mormon, Jesus Christ shows up in 6000 BC, and he is Yahweh. He is the God of Moses that it's a bloodthirsty God that loves blood offerings and sacrifices and the smell of burnt flesh. This guy's like, Yahweh or the highway.
Yeah.
Yahweh or the highway. I like that.
Well,
I'm gonna steal that saying. It's good. Yeah.
I was gonna say something and just completely slipped my mind. But anyway, go ahead and continue.
Well, I mean, I was talking about this earlier. We were texting about it. Like there's a story in the Bible. I don't know if both of you remember about the bronze serpents or the brazen serpents they call them. Like when Moses had all the people in the wilderness, after they escaped Egypt, they were in the wilderness and they kept on getting these snakes attacking them and bad things. All these animals and all these bad things were happening to them. That's where the manna came in, manna from heaven. So on top of manna, God told Moses to create these bronze serpents on a pole, it's almost like a snake on a cross, so they're it's almost like an allusion to the snake is actually Jesus. The snake is what they eventually called.
Right. Look to the serpent. Yeah.
Yeah. On Serath or whatever. The whole myth of Jesus is actually the serpent. So that is the New Testament God, more of a Greek God. And the Greeks are more like and the Christian thing, more like love each other, be kind to people, don't be mean to people. Where the old God is Yaldabaoth, like saying, no, you're here to just worship me. You're here to be my pet. And if you're not, I'm gonna do something horrible to you, like turn you into a pillar of salt or destroy your whole city, like in Sodom and Gomorrah.
That stuff makes it into Mormon scripture with Moses and the serpent. And the weird thing about it is seen as a similitude of being a forecasting of Jesus Christ as being the Savior, are these brazen, fiery feather serpents.
Yeah.
That and there's ones that are flying around and eating people and devouring people, and he makes these images of these dragons, which is curious because also with Mormons having such a connection, the apologists for years and years have said that Quetzalcoatl is Jesus Christ, is this feather.
Yeah, I've heard that as
fire serpent.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's interesting. If you read even in the traditional like King James version of the Bible, it says first of all the serpent spoke, and we know serpents don't speak in our age, right? So the snakes don't speak to us, right? And except in Harry Potter.
Their anatomy isn't correct. Their jaws.
It also says that God got mad at the serpent, right? And said, you won't have legs anymore. You have to crawl on your belly now, right? So part of his punishment for tempting Eve to eat the fruit was losing his legs. So he had legs, or it had legs or whatever, if it's a androgynous or he, she, whatever, the serpent, the being that tempted Eve to eat the fruit had legs before it tempted, and then Yaldabaoth, because he actually created the world, the actual God who was mad about eating the fruit said, I'm taking those legs away and you have to go around on your belly all the time now. So it's more like a dragon. I mean, like a reptilian with legs that speaks is more like a dragon, we would think, than like, but it just got transliterated into serpent. But actually serpent is actually, it's kind of an archetype for wisdom. You look at it all over, wisdom. There's a dragon myth, you see in Asia, they have the dragons. They have dragons all over, the dragons and serpents are like wisdom. And then we see that you mentioned about the feathered serpent. I mean, you see in Mexico how that comes in, that's on the flag. And that was, that was supposed to be like I believe it was like an eagle eating the serpent was like what they saw to form the whole country and everything, the whole Mexican coat of arms that's on the flag, So that's interesting.
That's prophecy.
We're named after the feathered serpent. America is actually named after the serpent and not named after this Italian guy named like Amerigo or whatever who wrote maps.
Now, before I don't mean, sorry to cut you guys off, but before we get going anymore, let's go ahead and acknowledge our our religious backgrounds. Of course, Gazelam has a Mormon background. Guion and I, we both have Pentecostal Christian backgrounds. But
hallelujah!
I'm assuming maybe he has any other some other kind of spiritual background as well.
I mean, I was raised Methodist and not really that.
Right.
My dad's Catholic because of we were Irish. And then I have a lot of Catholic experience too because I was raised in LA and around Mexicans and stuff.
Now, I want to get your guys' take on this. So, in the Bible, when Jesus is speaking to, I believe it's Nicodemus, and then he tells him, he says, "You must be born again." Some people take that as, well, being born again as in like reincarnated. You have to be reincarnated. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, generally, but from my experience with more Orthodox Christianity, like the Pentecostal and the Methodists and stuff, I think where they call themselves born again Christians because they feel that once you accept the Holy Spirit in your body, you are a different person here. So it's all about here. It's all. Mostly my experience. I don't know if you've had any different ones, but they don't believe in reincarnation. I mean, the whole idea of the West is never to die. We're in the East. They believe in reincarnation, and they're like, stop being born back. Like samsara and all that. That was my experience.
Well, yeah, of course, the modern day, typical modern day, Christian in the West does not believe in reincarnation. However, the original Christianity that was established, if Jesus was, existed while he was here, and then shortly after, it's completely different from what from what it's been turned into nowadays.
Yeah, and I think Mormonism. Maybe correct me if you have some different ideas, but I think Mormonism is more friendly towards reincarnation, or at least you become a god or something. Everybody becomes their own god, and they rule planets of all these little Mormons.
Yeah, it definitely does, especially in an esoteric, and if you go at a really deep level, is that this stuff and the whole concept of it are worlds without end. And there's a thing called multiple mortal probation that was taught by certain leaders early on. It's more underground teachings, but this was that you actually had to be every single element from the very smallest element all the way up to being a human being. So we've had to experience like every single animal, even to more to the level of the mineral level, even, that we've had to be compiled over and over again upon things. And God is that eventual progression. And there's a lot of modern Mormon transhumanist type of ideas that if we were to come in contact with our future selves or with like a future human being that had evolved to the point to where they would seem like gods to us because they have progressed so far. But then it also brings up the anti-theist thing: are these just evolved humans? I mean, how much of an evolved human is the one God versus are they just meta beings of sorts, you know? And so it gets really complicated.
Mhm.
I mean, understanding my ideas or my intuition of the whole thing is, I mean, what humans call gods are just powerful spirits, you know. And I mean, that's just not even in Christianity. I think because like when there was like when I was studying Buddhism, they said that the Buddha was teacher of God and men, you know. So they just considered gods like powerful humans or powerful spirits, you know, like people that have become like these wizards or something that understand what happens after you die and
Or
come. They're like more
or
enlightened.
some kind of ascended master. Is that what you're referring to?
Or they call them bodhisattvas in Buddhism. You know, it's people that have already surpassed us. They know what's going on. They know about why we come here to learn about limitations, and they've escaped. But they don't want to. They want to come back because they don't want everybody. They want to bring other people with them. They're like, if I can't my friends I've met along the way, then that's not really enlightenment. You know what I mean?
But
So would you say that
there's
there's some... Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting because of like secular Buddhism and things like that too. There's even room for non-theistic type of ideas. But I just wanted to go back on that really quick, that in Mormon thought, there's the deep, real hardcore fundamentalist Mormons believe that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught that Adam is our God. And so Adam was the first spirit being to receive a body. He created the earth with Yahweh, with Jehovah, who is Jesus Christ. And then Lucifer and Jesus are actually brothers. And so there you have your twin serpents. And so I know we're kind of backtracking on that, but I just think those are points that are interesting to make in what we're talking about here.
Well, I like that you brought that up because that's a perspective that's kind of new to me, saying that the two serpents represent Jesus and Lucifer. Now, I want to get into this. If you take a look at a Catholic priest and say a ceremonial magician, there's almost no difference. If you pay attention, you go to mass or whatever, and you see what the priest is doing. He's got his incense, he's intoning and vibrating, and he's walking around and you know, moving the incense, and you know, that looks like it's straight out of ceremonial magic. What do you guys think?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I think you could even trace all the, you know, either stuff from the Golden Dawn, and you know, when I was into Thelema more, you see that. I mean, they almost do the same. Like they have masses, and they actually have the cakes of light, and they have all that stuff. So it's like, I think that this stuff it goes all the way back to the Egyptian ideas, you know, of the Eucharist and stuff. I mean, people have had these things forever, you know, and we just kind of take these key concepts and we mold them into whatever we believe now, you know. So like the mass, the Catholic mass is just because people, you know, that's what when they took Christianity, which is more like Gnostic Christianity, which is the stuff we're talking about, more free thinking and stuff like that. They took it and mixed it with all this Roman stuff to make Catholicism, and then that's where it came, you know, with that. But yeah, I mean, that's and then later on you see that, you know, they made somebody who was like living Christ. You know, the Pope is supposed to be the vicar of Christ. He's supposed to be the closest thing to God. Like that's why you get it. You get into all the esoteric stuff with like John Dee and the English magicians, because when they adopted Protestantism, they didn't have a connection to God anymore. You know, I mean, because before that it was like you just go to the Pope gives it to the bishops gives it down all the way down to whoever your bishop is. So they had the Bishop of England, and you're like, okay, Bishop, tell me what God says, and he'll be like, all right, this is what I think God says. They're like, I don't like your answer. He'd go all the way to the Vatican. And if the Pope says that, that's what you're supposed to do, you know?
Oh, that's the Marseille deck, right? The French Marseille deck.
Yeah.
So the Hierophant is the Pope in the Marseille.
We used to just call him the Pope. but actually, I believe that that name actually comes from a mystery, the mystery schools, a priest of the mystery schools.
Yeah, I
There's
have that
the mystery
exact same
school
deck. I
for
love
you.
it.
Yeah.
The female pope.
Yeah.
Yeah, in earlier decks. But I mean, now would you say that all religious services basically ceremonial magic?
I would say so.
I mean,
Well, let's just say I don't know how esoteric this is, but there's a lot of speculation in Catholicism that in order to prove that you are the Pope, when you're first initiated in, you have to sit on a throne, and they have a little hole cut in the bottom where your balls have to hang it. And then the bishop guy goes and fills under there and makes sure you have nuts so that there's no female Pope that accidentally gets in.
No, I heard that came from because a
like
woman
Pope Joan, right?
masqueraded
Like,
as a man
yeah.
became the Pope. But they don't, I don't think Catholicism rejects that story as a folktale or whatever. But
Yeah,
they do
yeah.
that. I've seen that. They even had that on the Borgias. The Borgia.
Yeah, the Borgias.
You ever watch the Borgias? That was good.
I've read the comic book by Hordowski. It's based on the same thing,
Yeah, I mean, I think all these things go back, and even if you look at the Bible, like the Bible we have now, these myths were repeated. Like if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, which they didn't even have, until earlier when they figured out, they have a lot of these key myths in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Like the flood, and they have the ark. I mean, it's told differently. They have like the idea of the duality and stuff.
I would say that no doubt all the biblical stories that you come across, had their origin. They were copied from an earlier source, maybe in ancient Samaria or Egypt or somewhere.
Yeah.
So guys, did you know that they're taking those cuneiform tablets and they're actually starting to get AI to be able to translate them?
Oh, really?
And so they're translating stuff like they've never been able to do before. Nuts.
What's the AI come up with saying that maybe we haven't seen or thought of?
Well, it's really weird
So far,
because for like culture, for like court texts and things that they're talking about, like financial things and stuff, it's really good at. But with more curious, like what we're talking about, it tends to really hallucinate right now. And so it knows the language, but it's having a hard time putting it into
context is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of something I was reading up on the other day. It was saying that like when I was mentioning the Nag Hammadi library, that was just kind of like the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's all Gnostic texts.
Yeah.
And the Dead Sea Scrolls had like the Book of Enoch, which is not in the Bible, anymore or whatever. But these things weren't discovered till the 50s, the 1950s, and it really wasn't translated fully until like the late 90s, early 2000s. Just because of the development in technology, and also we were going through satanic panic and stuff. People didn't want to have this stuff out. It was blasphemous. Even modernly, which that's, and that modernly, hopefully it doesn't go there. But I feel another satanic panic type environment coming on now.
I think it's
in the middle of it. It is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, with the concerning occultism on social media and just in general, it seems like the hammer is starting to come down on the
body shop.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a lot of I mean, it's like a lot of people, because they're younger, they don't realize the time when if you were caught with like some kind of like occult type stuff or even occult books, I mean, they would consider that circumstantial evidence that you were some kind of criminal or you're going around doing bad things. Same thing goes for homosexuality.
Well, I mean,
people don't realize that homosexuality was considered a mental illness till the early 70s.
Well, I was still in the DSM.
Yeah.
What's intriguing is nowadays you can wake up one day and then all of a sudden a federal law has been passed that, like, take for instance with abortion, with the Supreme Court and that whole thing, like who'd have thought that was the hammer was going to come down on that? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you know, what we're talking about, you know, we're privileged to be able to talk about this information, have all these occult sources, but they could all be taken away, you know, within the blink of an eye one day when you wake up. All of a sudden, the Supreme Court rules, you know. So it's you know, consider this a privilege. That's why it's you know, I'm very serious about collecting occult texts and stuff like that, just in case it does get banned. Another witch hunt or satanic panic happens.
Imagine you know, and this I saw this happen, you know, during the 80s when I was getting raised in the first satanic panic thing. People would use things they'd find in the house as a circumstantial evidence, you know, like the Big Martin trial that happened around here. You know, they said it was a mass child molestation thing all in this nursery. It turned out to be totally fake, but they found a few things in the guy wasn't even into like dark stuff. He was into like pyramid. He had like a pyramid thing, like a pyramid hat thing. He was more new age, this is circumstantial evidence in the case. They're like, here's a video of him talking about pyramid stuff. He's a Satanist, and that proves that he was doing this, you know, to hurt kids for Satan. It's like, so, you know,
ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
We're around the same age, Guion, and so we went through a lot of the same stuff. And out here in Utah, there was a really popular writer, and actually her books went worldwide. They were popular in England and all throughout the United States. But her name was Beatrice Sparks, and she released this book called Jay's Journal. And it was a book that was supposed to be these actual journals from a kid that she published, but from permission with the parents. But it was this total satanic book where he was all into Satanism, and like they were doing satanic rituals. I think there was some big thing where he cut off some cow, some horse nuts or something, and put them in a jar. Ridiculous stuff, you know, just exploitive type of thing.
No, there was lots of there was another one that actually they released a book, and Anton LaVey himself sued them because they mentioned the Church of Satan and all this stuff, and I think that's another around the time that Anton was more like saying he's atheist, you know, which is I think was kind of a cop out a little bit, you know, I don't know, but I mean that's just my opinion. But saying you're atheist, I mean that's a really big thing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it means to you guys, but
what's crazy is she was exploited to have alternative motives, and that these things were completely made up. And it's funny because we grew up in pretty much the same town, and the worst thing, I've got to read his actual journals because his brother released them later on to show that she made up all this bullshit. And the craziest thing he did was he'd go and drive over to the Krishna temple down in Spanish Fork and hang out and eat vegetarian food once in a while. That was her idea of Satanism, you know?
Well, the book I'm thinking, I can't think of the name of the book, but the book I'm thinking of was a woman who claimed that she was really horribly abused by a satanic cult. And she tried to link it back to the Church of Satan directly. And the person
what is that?
Was actually getting this from the psychiatrist that she was dealing with. And he said it was suppressed memories, you know? And
I know what you're talking about.
And this person never said anything at the time. And she said it was all repressed memories, right? And then later on, the psychiatrist married the woman who was supposedly the victim, you know? So, and he was supposed to be your psychiatrist. I mean, that's so it was there was you know, in Southern California here, a lot of people don't realize how serious the Manson case was, you know, because, you know, drawing on with the blood on the walls and all that stuff. They just over here, like hippies were pretty much considered Satanists after that, you know, because I was born the year that happened. And like anybody with long hair and a beard, my family would be like, get away from them. They're going to abduct you. They're going to get, you know, and there could have been something, you know, there could have been something to that. I mean, I'm grateful that my family wanted to keep me safe, but still, like, everybody here was like, you know, the hippies were all along Satanists and not, you know, not the good kind of or happy Satanists. They were bad people that hurt people, that like the Manson family all along, you know. And so, you know, and you know, there's also a lot of theories that possibly the CIA, because, you know, Charles Manson was raised by the state, you know, from an early age. His mother was like a drug addicted prostitute. So he was in these institutions his whole life. He was raised by the state. Psychiatrists have been experimenting on him since he was a child, and they believe that he learned how to form a murderous cult from his handlers, in prisons, his prison psychologists and stuff like that.
You don't even need a handler to be institutionalized and learn all the tricks and stuff. A lot of tricks, anyway.
He even had some Scientology training in the when he was in prison. Scientology actually had a program where they went into the prisons and tried to help. But they were, because I don't know if you agree, but I think Scientology is totally just like governmental magic. Like when I was in the army, they have a lot of these tricks. I mean, really, they call it more like psychiatric technology. It's more like but you could call it black magic. And the stuff in Scientology that they do, like bull baiting, like as far as like telling somebody like the worst things about them and everything, and they just have to stand there and take it. That's bull baiting, right? They do that in the army. That's what basic training is. You see the guy screaming in your face, "You're a maggot," and you're just like, you take it.
Freemasonry.
Yeah, I mean, and Freemason, that goes back to even back then. It's just getting people where they don't get triggered, essentially, right? Where you could say whatever you want, and they're just really, really, like they don't have no problems. And the whole thing with that lie detector thing, the auditing that the Scientology, that stuff, I encountered some of that stuff when I was in the military. They told us all that, and listening to binaural beats. I mean, this is in the 80s when I was in the army, right? All that stuff wasn't out yet, and a lot of that stuff comes from the government, and they just denied it. But it actually got declassified like in 2004, where they admitted that the U.S. Army and the CIA, actually got the remote viewing. You've heard of the remote viewing programs and programs where they actually were projecting like, harm on people, like they were projecting harm. They were actually not just trying to astral project or whatever you want to call it and spy, but actually like remote strangling, like Darth Vader or something. Like they were trying to strangle like the Russians and stuff.
I think every time Hollywood shows us a little bit of that, there also, there is some truth hidden in everything that Hollywood does show us.
Yeah.
But did any of you see or read the men that stare at goats?
Yeah.
I never watched that.
It's all based on.
I had never seen that.
The book's really good too.
But I can see the comparison. But
they don't. I don't think they may not do that, or at least they don't admit that they do that anymore. But they do use goats for medical training in the army. They like blow them up and all that, and then they say, "Oh, you'll fix them." They'll like put a grenade by a goat, or they'll cut a goat's leg off and say, "Save him and fix him," and like stuff like that. They do that still. they mess those goats up really bad, and then the medic has to like fix them. They can't do that to humans. So.
Stitch them back together.
Well, obviously not. But so let's talk a bit about the Mormon Mafia. Now, I know to some people that sounds a little outrageous, but in Utah, you do hear about the Mormon Mafia. I can't say I've met anybody in that, but supposedly they had a lot to do with the founding of Las Vegas. You guys, Gazelam, what do you know about that?
Originally, this stems back to a group called the Danites that were a secret society within Mormonism that was probably started by Joseph Smith, but it got out of hand. And they were originally a secret police force within the religion itself that were kind of set out to make sure everybody's following the P's and Q's and doing what they're supposed to. And they would even get like 12-year-old, you're considered a deacon, to where they would just sit out on the porch whittling and whistling and watching everybody and making sure everybody's minding their P's and Q's. Mm-hmm. So this group was called the Daughter of Dan, and they had all the Masonic rituals of like, you will sacrifice yourself and everything. And they got out of control and became such a big underground organization. And then there was also another group started by Joseph Smith and Brigham Young called the Council of the 50 that was a order within that was a secret police type of thing. But they were actually a theocratic thing where they wanted to establish both Brigham Young and Joseph Smith themselves were established as king of the world, or the grand, what would they call it? The grand primate of the Illuminati.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
I
now go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
this brings to mind. What was it called? Was it the Kingdom of Heaven? You know that about the Laffertys. You know the Lafferty family that actually and doing blood atonement and all that. I mean, I think there's a lot of that was in the 80s.
It's the School of the Prophets, is what they were called.
Yeah. They have a lot of these like underground groups that I think. But the one where I first heard of the Mormon Mafia was concerning Howard Hughes, which I've always been told is a distant relative. I mean,
and that's the Las Vegas stuff.
Anything, but you know, Howard Hughes was very close to the Mormons, even though he refused to ever join them. And we also know, you know, he was huge in Las Vegas, right? He only used Mormons because, you know, because he had that OCD or whatever, you know, he had this whatever was wrong with them, where he had some kind of disorders, and he thought they were clean, and because they didn't drink, you know, he his business more than if he had a regular.
Supposedly, like, okay, do you guys remember that movie Casino that came out? Well, one of Scorsese's films that showed, I guess, was about the mob running Vegas back in the 50s and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they had been getting under a lot of hot water and under a microscope for owning these casinos. So they wanted somebody on paper as owner of the casinos that basically didn't smoke, didn't drink, that, you know, to where the authorities would back off and say, okay, well, we don't need to look so close at this. Supposedly,
there was a lot of.
Go ahead.
Oh, there was a lot of weird stuff with Howard Hughes though with the mafia and all of that went on too. And the thing is Mormons are the ones that settled Las Vegas originally, so they'd been there.
Yeah, the first permanent settlers.
Yeah. A lot of places out west, every time I encounter something, they usually mention Mormons, because I think Mormons were they were persecuted for the polygamy and blasphemy and all that stuff. So they were actually sent out west, and then they would convert people and send them out here with carts and stuff. I heard that they actually had carts. They didn't even have wagon trains a lot of times. They just push these carts all the way from like the East Coast to down here. And it's I mentioned earlier when I was texting that Joshua trees were actually named by the Mormons, you know, because they thought that the arms, you know, they thought they were like the arms of Joshua, like welcoming them into California. So
that's so cool. I had never heard that.
Mormons.
I never heard that either.
Mormon ideas. They call things like Mormon tea. Ephedrine is Mormon tea. They have all this.
It has ephedrine in the.
They were like they were just pioneers. They were just like, I mean, and if you look at it, which I don't know if you agree, if you look at somebody who's like who started basically like a coven or a witch cult in the pioneer days, you know, like a pioneer witch cult, that would look like a Mormon pretty much, right? It's like a rough and tumble guy with a bunch of women around him, and, you know, and a tough guy that has knives, and, you know, he's a tough pioneer with a bunch of a whole tribe of women around him. That's like a coven. I mean, people don't put it together, but I think that's where the polygamy came from. I mean, that's why I was told, which I don't know if you guys want to comment on this. This is like a secret, supposedly, right? But I think it's more like an urban legend, maybe. They say, you know, when you get into the left-hand path, people will say, you know, if you ever get in real bad trouble, like the government's after you, they're going to put you in prison, or the CIA is going to kill you, whatever, right? You think you're in real bad trouble, and even if you're a witch or a left-hand path or a dark sider or whatever, like Mormons are undercover, you know, witches, and they'll help you out. If you go to them and say, hey, you know, can you guys help me? I'll convert to Mormonism. If you guys could protect me from the government, they'll usually do it, because they actually were anti-government a lot. You know, now modernly, you know, of course, the official LDS, they don't condone the polygamy. They don't condone a lot of this stuff. They don't condone the separating from the government and all that. But Mormons at one point were trying to form their own country out here. They weren't trying to be part of just a state. You know, they were trying to form their own country. At one point, they had a presidential candidate who was running that was actually trying to, if he would have won, he would have tried to make it like a Mormon country, essentially, you know?
Mm.
Oh, well, Joseph Smith was running for president before he was killed in Carthage. And so he was also trying to become the head of the Freemasons at the time, because the position was open for the first time in years to become the head of the I think it was the English. Well, he could do it here in America and then England. But when these Council of the 50 papers came out, he had these plans to sell a flame-throwing submarine to the Russians in order to overturn the American government. And so once he was killed and they were running out here to Deseret, they were escaping from America to come out to Mexico. And I think that had a big part to do with the polygamy too. It's not only for these big leaders, but if you have people that you can get to escape the federal government and then commit into marrying into the polygamy, then at that point you're a fugitive. Mm-hmm. And so you have established, cut yourself off from the United States. And that was the deliberate thing to do that. And they were running up to Canada, all the way down to Chihuahua, Mexico, parts of California, but mostly established in Utah there in Salt Lake. But it's some crazy stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot. It's a fascinating subject. I mean, at one point, nobody took me up on it, but I wanted to start like free Mormons, right? And try to unite, occultism and Mormonism, even trying to, try to save the fundamentalist LDS, and put them all together.
Yeah, I love it.
Because I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, myself personally, I've been polyamorous and stuff like that, and I think modernly it shouldn't be against the law. I mean, the FLDS with the kids, of course, they should, I think people should respect children. They shouldn't try to marry off kids. 13 or whatever. They should respect the 18 years old. So that actually, I think I think that's a big point, even with my own personal morality. But
there's a big difference between
that.
There's a big difference between people that have consensual adult polyamorous relationships that are healthy, that have open communication between people. There's a lot more going on than just what polyamorous is. You're the one bringing it up, but it's just you can shit all over that fucking fundamentalist bullshit going down. I mean, there were ways that those women in those situations a lot of times were considered chattel.
Mm-hmm.
And used that way.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a lot of that.
When you say chattel, what do you mean by chattel?
Like cows and shit.
Oh, no,
property.
Like cattle. Okay.
Like almost like a like farm animals, or kind of like or slaves, I guess you would like how I mean that's a really bad subject, but I think
like cattle treatment. Yeah.
And I think people took that as humans like that too. They're like, oh, we're just dealing with these humans a certain way, and they don't really have rights. They're just more like a farm animal, like hook them up to a plow or something. I mean, it's really sad to think of it like that. But in the old West, out here in the pioneer days, I mean, who was going to stop them? And I love that.
The Book of Moses and all that, it's all about slavery and shitting on women and women not being able to speak or talk or anything. And so if that's going to be your foundation of your morality and what you build your morality on, then that stuff's going to come through and be a piece of shit,
Now, let me ask you guys this. When you go to just about any church, there's worship going on. There's all this energy being raised. Okay. Wouldn't you think that all that energy being raised is being sucked up by someone or something behind the curtain? Now, I know that somebody, one of us can walk into a church and just suck up that energy if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But would you say that they're having all these people, some kind of establishment or someone behind the curtains is allowing all these people, encouraging them to go to a certain place, raise all this energy, and then just suck it up somehow, somewhere?
I mean, I think it's
besides money. I understand the money part, but there's all that energy that's being raised. I mean, I know that in some churches back in the day, there was people that were underground underneath the sanctuary absorbing the energy, you know, that was being raised. But would you say that any of that's going on nowadays?
I would say for sure. I mean, that's the whole idea of cults. I mean, and you look at even like with the MAGA cult. I mean, that's now our religion, our political system. You know, you see it in religion a lot. Now we're seeing it in political. You know, I mean, cults. I have a lot of experience with cults. I mean, they turn people's brains off. They convince you to take irrational beliefs that are not, that hurt yourself and others. You know, and right. I mean, you see that in religion all the time. Now we're seeing it in politics. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't. Because I mean, you're seeing it right on the screen where people are attacking the Capitol, and people are like, "It wasn't that bad. Come on," or the FBI did it, you know, or like, you know.
Well, it could the same thing can be looked at, you know, whether you're right or left. I mean, both sides, of course, I'm sure, are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think as magicians, that at least for me, I see it as a form of mentalism, hypnosis, mind control, manipulation, mass group psychology.
Yeah, because people get so worked up, whether you're right or left, they'll get so worked up over this to where they'll actually die for it. You know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hopefully they tone it down, but I have serious concerns that we're going towards more civil unrest and possibly even a civil war. You know.
It wouldn't surprise me.
You know? I mean, because I mean, people, you know, and it makes it's like you can't get through to people. You know, I mean, I try to tell them. I mean, here's a video of a guy confessing to crimes, and they're like, "Nah, they're just joking around," or they're just making up things of like, no, you know. I mean, they just find excuses because I mean, really, people do create their own reality. You know, that by just thinking it and by doing things,
right? And they want to exist in their own reality.
Yeah.
By just seeing what they want. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what's interesting with echo chambers, the way that they've become set up and things. And it's actually programmed into the way social media like Facebook and things are set up for us to end up in echo chambers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm really concerned about it now, and I'm surprised a lot of my friends are into this stuff, and I try to talk them out of it. And I mean, I'm not, you know, I mean, people can believe what they want, but I think a lot of people are taking beliefs that are they're just not good for themselves, you know, and their families, you know, that they don't realize that they're going to get attacked, you know, because I, you know, being in LA, I've got most of my friends are Mexican or Hispanic or whatever. There's a lot that support Trump, and I show them a video of Trump saying, you know, if your parents weren't born here, you know, we may be able to say you're not a citizen and deport you, or I mean, and like, you know, a lot of people are like, well, I've been born here, like all this, but what's to say somebody's going to say, well, maybe we're just going to make it up that your parents were born here because you're brown, you know? I think people could. I wouldn't put it past a lot of these politicians.
I just want to say to everybody watching, this is not a right left or you know, a right or left you know, type show. This is nonpartisan.
That's why.
There's no overall political view in this show. Just let everybody know.
It's just for me in LA, it's concerning because you know, a lot of my friends and because I have a lot of Caucasian features, there's a lot of like, you know, tension between people, and I don't like that. You know what I mean? You know, I raised 3 black kids, and you know, I don't really look at race or skin color or anything like that. But I'm noticing a lot more it's coming up, and I don't like it. And
you know what? I think that if there was no Trump or no Biden, that the situation would be the same. I believe that, you know,
boo on both of those assholes. Yeah. Boo.
I would say that the situation would be the same with someone else, because there seems to be an unseen hand moving us in this direction, or moving the public.
You have a two-party system that's like such a two-party system that's such a piece of shit and stuff, both of them. But I just want to cut in really quick, because I feel like what we're really talking about is belief and belief systems and
the power of belief.
I am a big rooter for epistemology, the Socratic method. Please study it, learn it, do the techniques, play around with it when you're watching TV and your friends. Use critical thinking. everyone, please just do it. You're going to be a more powerful magician. I promise and guarantee it to you. Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at the Hermetic principles, one of them is polarization, and I see that being used against people a lot, especially here in the USA. And like you said, I mean, if you always go left, you know, and this doesn't even in politics, right? Let's say left-hand path, right-hand path, right? If you're always going right, you're going around in circles. You're always going left, you're going around in circles. That's why I like chaos, because I feel chaos, you can like, choose to when to go left and when to go right. You know, but you know, that's what they do. People get polarized, and they're like they're thinking, okay, if I always go left, then eventually it's going to be okay. But you're really going around, and you're going around in circles, and other people look at you like, well, you know, you're going around in circles, you know, because I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's just polarizing so much, and then that just leads to like, you know, a lot of strife and.
I think that it is helpful to see from both points of view, and then just kind of make up your mind from there. Whereas some people tend to just
circular thinking is a really bad fallacy.
Yeah,
circular reasoning and.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I think a lot of it too is a lot of people don't even get into politics or religion or anything that much. So like when you just say one thing, they're like, if you say it convincingly, or if somebody has a little bit more of a spin on it than the other person, they'll be like, oh, I'm convinced, you know. So you know, people just go along with it. But
well, I think that, you know, it is possible and easy for people who follow, you know, a certain path in the occult, once they've broken out from religion, to become religion again in their ways of thinking without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I come back to epistemology.
I mean,
why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think the things you do? Analyze yourself. That's the biggest thing, is to try to discover yourself and why you think and believe the things that you do.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I was growing up, people would always say, like, never argue about religion or politics, because people get emotional and they get, you know, they get offended, and then the next thing you know, they're throwing things at you instead of talking to you, you know, or something like that.
And in a lot of cases, there's just no end to it. I mean, it doesn't matter what you show them or what you try to, what epiphanies you try to unlock in their mind by telling them. You know, there's just no changing their way of thinking. There's no end to the argument, so it's just a waste of energy.
The end of the argument is them fighting. Is them getting mad and wanting to physically fight you or use physical, which is like bad, of course, you know.
It seems like argumentative.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it seems like argumentatively, that's what is nice about left-handed path thinking and Gnosticism and those type of mindsets, is that it allows you to speculate all kinds of crazy things. You know, the Gnostic heroes are usually somebody that's this obscure person that was mentioned one time in the Bible. Like the Gospel of St. Thomas, for instance, is all about Jesus's twin brother. And it's like crazy ass shit, you know?
Yeah, or the prayer of Jabez. And all of a sudden, Jabez is a hero, and there's only like one line of them or something. Like, I see what you mean.
Oh yeah, I remember when that book was popular. Yeah.
Apocryphal works are interesting though, because in Mormonism, there's kind of this thought that all religious works or spiritual works can be seen as scripture. And as the Order of Amun, which is my branch of Mormonism, is that we even allow to have other things scripture, like let's say the Illuminatus trilogy or Plan 10 from Outer Space, or, you know, there's so many things that
whatever is useful to you, basically.
Yeah, because really you can find things in there that you're going to be able to put into your mindset or your kind of zeitgeist of your art, and I mean, you know?
That's how these things probably came up in the first place, is people saw these other works of art, other works of fiction, other events, and they put them into this and then said, well, that must be what the gods think we should do because it's happening to me in my reality, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, even the Bible, it's...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, even the Bible itself is technically fan fiction. I mean, most of those writings are not attributed to
You,
Matthew, Mark, or
I
John
mean,
and these people. They're
yeah, we could, people can, debate back and forth about, the Bible here and there, but ultimately, there's no way to know exactly what, because all those stories like we were talking about were copied from earlier sources from other cultures, and we don't understand what their mindset
that
was,
itself
their way of
proves that
thinking was
those
thousands of
writers
years
didn't
ago.
write that.
What's that?
That itself proves that those writers didn't write that stuff originally.
Yeah.
They already know that those scriptures didn't come up until like 100 years after Jesus was already dead. There's a lot that can go on 70 to 100 years after somebody dies.
Oh, definitely. Culture can change. Things can become taboo that you never thought would, like we're seeing in today's society.
Well, and there was figures that had similar circumstances, or at least the mythologies around Christ. Like they're born from a virgin, killed and risen.
Yeah.
I mean, Osiris. There's even like the Yule log came from the idea of a Sumerian myth where people would have like a log, and they would burn the log, and like we're killing this being, and then in the morning they'd bring in like a Christmas tree, and that's where the Christmas tree comes from, as what I've heard, right? Is they have a full tree, like it's this is reborn from the burnt log, So like
Right.
this being killed and being destroyed and being reborn, and like that whole thing, the whole idea of the Christ myth is like it's not new. I mean,
Blurring that card out.
there was other supposed messiahs too before this,
More towards the middle.
alleged messiahs, that had the same circumstances.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. I'm really interested in all the different mythologies because there is this weird kind of overlap. So, how much of it is coincidence? How much of it is borrowed from other things? How much of it is just people trying to make things fit?
Yeah, and how much truth is there in each one too?
Mm-hmm.
You really got to use your intuition and do your digging and just kind of make up your mind from there.
And plus, a lot of the things that people that it says in the Bible, that's the thing about the Bible is like you could turn it to one page and it says kill everybody in this village, and you could turn it to another page that says don't kill. You could turn it to another page that says if somebody slaps, don't slap them back.
So much contradictory statements in it. Yeah.
Slap me again. I mean, you could get contradictory stuff. It's not the same book. It's not like one author, and it's not like somebody did this like it's not like a book that comes out today. Like
you know what I think? People who study the Bible and make connections. You know what I think that's like? It's like kind of like when when you're doing a crossword puzzle and you see the words that are in the crossword, but then you go down the list and then you end up finding words that are there, but they're not on the list. You say, well, I'll just circle this also. Like I think that's what a lot of religious people do when they study these texts and say, oh, there's a revelation or there's a connection here and there.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's no end to it.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was into Christianity a lot, when I was going to Bible school and wanting to become a pastor and all that, I considered it. It's like the Bible was my tarot. Like you just go to one page and whatever you're thinking, is that the answer? You figure out why is that the answer. God's telling you to go to that page, and what does that mean? I mean, it's just like the tarot.
Yeah, it's called blabometry.
Yeah.
Is what it's called.
Yeah. So books and all like cards, books, everything. They're like intuitive tools, I think. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, especially if somebody maybe has studied that whole book, but then has replaced every character with some situation in life or something, some spiritual aspect. Kind of like when people do read some people do read the tarot, certain cards represent certain aspects and things like that.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, out in the Bible that says it to help the poor. Especially in the New Testament, help the poor, help the sick, help the need. But and supposedly in the USA, we're supposed to be a Christian country, but a lot of people don't believe in that. They don't like.
I mean,
welfare, they don't like this and that. They don't like.
Another thing to keep in mind is that they say the founding fathers were God-fearing men and Christians, but were they really? I mean, was this?
No, they were not.
I don't think they were.
Absolutely were not. The Constitution doesn't. The Constitution, when it says in the First Amendment, freedom of religion, that's freedom from religion too.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
religion is very, religion is a slippery slope a lot of times too. I mean, where does it go? Like I was watching the thing about the a documentary about Scientology. They were saying people that left, that people are, you know, sometimes people might be treated bad in this gold base and all that stuff, and you know, and but if you, they said if you went in and told them, hey, we're the FBI and we're rescuing you, they would say, no, this is my religious rights, right? I want to be like this. I want to follow this guy, and if he's mean to me, so be it. You know, that's my religion. You know, like even, and it's not just, I'm not picking on Scientology. I mean, you look at a Zen master. A lot of times those guys hit the people. They'll push them. They'll be mean. They'll yell at them. And there's like, that's part of my religious experience. In Zen Buddhism, you know, a lot of times people do that kind of stuff. In all these other different religions, you know, people are mean to people, and they say, well, that's part of the experience. And people.
What was it with Patty Hearst where she was brainwashed? And
yeah.
Patty Hearst, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I know Patty Hearst story. I mean, that was in Southern California, or it was up north, I believe. But I think the shootout was actually around here in Southern California, where they finally got the Simonese army.
The bank robbery.
Yeah, well, they did the bank robbery, and then they finally found the house. They rescued Patty Hearst, and then those guys held up in a house and they burned it down. That's a lot of people, that's a thing that people don't realize too. Is if you're held up in a house and you know the police are surrounding it, usually they burn the house down. You know, they'll
reminds me of Waco.
There's Waco. You know, that's a pattern. That's a pattern. We had a guy, a rogue police officer here a few years ago. I think his name was Dormer. He was a police officer that got, you know, he got in trouble, and he started just going around you know, attacking other police and judges and stuff like that. And he actually went up to Big Bear over in the mountains and was in a cabin, and they burned it down. You know, I mean,
all
that, you know.
And now it's a boxing mecca, and all the rich people live up there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in California. I'm thinking maybe of cashing out and moving somewhere where you guys are or something, but it's getting pretty wild here. I've been here all my life, but I don't know if I could take it. I can't take it where it snows.
Yeah.
I like all the seasons. I crave summer. I crave winter. So
yeah, we don't really have seasons here.
But anyway, so it's been a great discussion. We've gone over an hour now. Great stuff, guys. Anything that you guys want to go ahead and plug before we go ahead and call it a night?
I mean, I can plug if you want to check out my social media. I mean, you got the links. You usually put it in Guillotine Productions. I mean, I want to also give the other disclaimer is, you know, I don't want to be a political this way or that way. I just wish that everybody could get along more, you know, and I'm troubled by people assuming that you know, that people have certain beliefs just by the way they look. I don't like that, you know. But I mean, I'm not blaming it on one religion or the other. I mean, or one political party or the other. And I don't even like politics or to be political. But you know, it's just troubling to see all the strife, and there's riots, you know, in here, and there's a lot of like
stop the hate.
Mobs going and attacking stores and stuff here. It's troubling, you know, that we're in this state. And I blame politics a lot, but it's not all politics. Like you said, it doesn't matter what side or whatever. I mean, I think the reason they have sides is so we're so busy fighting right or left.
It's just a distraction is all it is.
The real problem is from above, you know.
That's just meant to be a distraction.
Get brainwashed, like you were saying, you know, for us to occupy our brains against each other instead of looking up and saying, well, there's people coming down and they're the ones who are really suppressing us. So that's my final thought.
Yeah.
Mine is I'd like to plug my Etsy site. It's Etsy shop Order of Amun. That's AWMAN. But with Sawan coming up in the fall time, I've done some really discounted on by tarot deck. If you want to support an artist, this is an artisan deck. It's on really high quality paper.
If you're gonna show them like in the middle, because if you go on the side, it'll kind of like blur it out because of your background.
I can't see my screen is the problem.
Oh,
the middle.
Okay. Oh. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we can.
Is that the middle?
Yeah, that's good.
I wish I could see my screen. That was the problem. One thing I was worried about. But this is called the Pips Parade Triumphs Tarot. So if you look up Triumphs Tarot on Etsy, they're poker size. There's 81 cards. This is an awesome deck. It has all the trump cards. I've put my minors are actual French pips, so you can actually play it as a card game, as a playing card deck too, as tarot was originally meant to be. There's 2 jokers. There's also a chaos card, so it's really great if anyone's looking into both tarot and cartomancy and a nice bridge between the two. You could definitely start to learn more than just tarot or cartomancy playing with these. It's both esoteric and it's also for gameplay. So I have multiple sizes too. There's like a really big deck. They have these big cards with the 23 majors, which makes it more for meditation. And then most of the sets come with a little mini size that come with the matchbox size. So anybody into tarot, like, check it out and check me out, man, please.
Yeah,
I'm starting artist.
Everybody who's watching, like I had mentioned before, I below the video description, I always put Guion's links if I have him on, or if Gazelam's on, I have his social media links below, including his Etsy. So both their stuff you can go ahead and check out just by hitting the video description. All that stuff will be there, all the links. Well, guys,
real quick, it is easy to find. It is easy to find walkthroughs on YouTube too. If you type in Triumph's Tarot, there will be walkthroughs that people have posted the deck, so you can get a closer look at it.
Okay, everybody take note of that. And if nothing else, everybody who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.
All right.
Thanks, Alfredo. Guion.
All right.
Thanks, guys.